Happy New Year, all the listeners of the Chasing Clarity Health and Fitness podcast. It's myself, Jeff Black, Brandon DeCruz back. We had a week off, but you guys did not miss a beat because we had that amazing episode with Danny talking about chronobiology. But today is episode 39. How to know if you're ready to tackle your fat loss goal in 2023, transforming your body and health in the new year. But before we begin, Brandon and I are going to try something a little different. So you guys listening who don't like to hear about how our days or weeks are going or anything like that, we'll probably chat for about 10 or 15 minutes and then move into the topic, because we're going to try. Sometimes the back dialogue that we have is very insightful for each other. And we kind of wanted to give you guys a lens into our friendship, which is why we collaborate so well. As two coaches who do really well in this industry, you don't really see many coaches collaborate at a high level for a really long time. I know over at the Excellence Cartel, we do a good job of that. Brandon and I think do. I mean, I'm super close to Brandon. So it's just, they're two different podcasts to me, but some of it with Brandon and I, it's so technical. I often felt we didn't really give you guys the insight of what really allows that episode to flow the way it does for us to educate you all, because we kind of know each other's bright spots in the space. And, you know, we allow that dynamic side of us to really take hold in the podcast. So, B-Man, I'm going to kick it off. Dude, my last couple weeks have been really, really good to see. Last night it capped off, WWE Raw. Matt Christman came through a ticket, so Keegan was stoked. I saw that. They did a Music City match. So they bring out a fucking grand piano, drum sets, acoustic guitars, keyboards, banjos. Like, dude, I watched the dude get hit maraca shakers in the face. It was, and then the final ending was they drove the guy like choke slammed him through the grand piano. Dear Lord. Dude, these guys had like blood dripping off their back. I'm like, y'all talk shit about wrestling being fake, but some of those stunts are just high end anymore. You know what I mean? It's like you're watching a NFL wide receiver fly off these ropes and hit some dude. That's gonna hurt. You know what I mean?
What a lot of people don't realize. So I've worked with a couple of professional wrestlers, more in like the ECW days, the AEW, some of the other like NXT, like not the WWE, the WWF, but like the lower federations, but still professional, still their career. And these guys are top tier athletes. A lot of people will say, they kind of phrase it as sports entertainment, which it is. They're storylines. These guys are actors, but they're multifaceted and they're extremely talented athletes in and of itself. And I think a great example of that is I was always a big UFC and an MMA fan. And we look at someone like Brock Lesnar, who was an NCAA champion. Then he went from that. He pivoted to UFC, and he also did WWE, and he was an immensely successful athlete in all of these federations. So it's really, we really have to take a step back and say, yes, they are doing it for the entertainment purposes, but those hits, these guys sustain crazy amounts of injury. Unfortunately, there's a massive opioid epidemic within professional wrestling due to the injuries that they incur and the drug addictions that they get wrapped up into just to be able to perform. But some of these guys are on the road 50 weeks out of the year. I know several professional wrestlers that they're literally in a different city every single week. So it's a hard life. It's a road life, but I have immense respect for them. And let's look at some of the guys that have transitioned out of there. Someone like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, or John Cena. These are guys who are immensely successful now in the entertainment industry as a result of pivoting off of the success they had in the ring.
Yeah, man, I really look at it and I'm like, God, you guys are just able to do some amazing shit. Like at the end of the day, it's the most entertaining things. And you're talking to a guy who my Tennessee Vols, which, I was telling you, got to come down for a game sometime. 102,000 people pack into that stadium. It's wild. You just feel the energy, the ups and the downs. But an event like that is so entertaining that, like, dude, SummerSlam was like a top event for me ever in my life. Like, I went to, it's all live. I was like, holy shit, this is 4 hours of just pure production. Watching Brock Lesnar coming out from what the Tennessee Titans do in a tractor and slam into the ring and pick it up. It was just the funniest thing I've seen in my adult life. You know what I mean?
I think the best way to encapsulate, if anyone has not been to a professional wrestling event, this is something that, I share on the podcast, very early on in their episodes when you first took Keegan to the first match, was that this is something that me and my mother did. This was like birthday presents that I got. We would go to Madison Square Garden or to like the PNC Bank Arts Center and things like that to go see professional wrestling for the WWE. Mm-hmm. And at that time, dude, it was back when we were watching, it was WWF. However, like the Raw, the Attitude Era. However, it is electrifying. It is something that, the entire room is shaking. People are on their feet the entire time. It is so energetic. It's a great sports type of atmosphere. So it's something that I always have fond memories of. And it's something that, I love seeing you do that with Keegan. I think it's a great bonding experience. And I'm sure that will transition. I'm not sure if he's into MMA yet, but I'm sure I do know you are. So that'll probably be something you guys transition into later in life as well.
He watches it with me, man. We love it a lot. Like it's cool. And then I guess let's see. I was reflecting on 2022 and I ended up leaving it better than I found it, finding good woman, good life, good business. But I did have a reflection about something. And my reflection was, I don't think I worked as hard as I would like to have worked in 2022. Like I can tell, dude, I wrote a whole I wrote a book in a year. You know what I mean? Like that illustrates the amount of time I had, but it speaks testaments to what I built where my team can run through autonomy and be able to grow like that. Like we just added another coach to Relentless. Morgan Rollins joined the team. She's already bringing over quite a few coaches clients. And we're actually going to be, so any coach I hire outside the city, I decided I'm going to do like a once every few months where they fly in and shoot a bunch of content with a videographer and then fly them back out. Like that way it's like I'm able to keep the consistent theme of everybody in my gym, the look the same, the videographer the same, the production the same. But I look back on that last year, man, and I was like, I'm going to change some things. So like I'm taking a whole nother hour a day of in-person clients. So I'm going to open up my in-person books and just charge more for my time. So it'll work out. And I really kind of I think I got away. I think I got, B, you know how it is, man, in this space, because a lot of people, let's be honest, between mentors and clients, they can tend to be slightly intense on us, our mental states and our emotional states at times. Right. So I think I got to the point that like, if I knew I was off the clock, I was like, fuck it. I didn't want to be bothered. And I would be agitated. I was bothered. And it really felt conflicting to me because I genuinely like what I do. Do you know what I mean? So I almost like had to walk through a year of living the life of what people are chasing. So all you fucking people who are chasing working 20-hour weeks, making baller money, I can tell you I did it in 2022 and I didn't like it. Some of us are just built to work. Some of us are just built to fucking do it. And there's going to be a lot of shit coming people's my way. Like I'm always in trouble on Instagram. So you guys probably don't, Brandon knows that. You guys don't see me as much as you should, but I'm be putting out a lot of good content.
All I'm going to say is we're lucky that the podcast platform is not relegated or regulated through Instagram because guys, we would not have a podcast. It would just be me holding it down on a weekly basis because we're at the point that I cannot even, I'll make a post to obviously let the audience know. A lot of people from Instagram that follow me, that follow Jeff, they follow along and they get the updates on the podcast, what topics we're covering or what was our most recent guest. And I cannot even tag Jeff in these posts anymore. So I don't know what he did. Instagram doesn't tell me, but all I'm going to say is if it came down to a podcast scenario from the eyes of Instagram, I'm the good guy. Jeff is the black sheep. And that's all we need to say.
Yeah, absolutely. But I wanted to share that with everyone. And I want to get into, how the last little bit of 2022 is for you. But that was an honest reflection I had. I'm going to talk, I talked to my counselor about it, closing. I think any business owner should have someone you talk to every 8 weeks to just be able to blow steam off to. And he's like, dude, if you like fucking work, you just work. He goes, workaholics, no different than calling someone narcissist than it is calling someone fat than it is calling someone whatever. It's just a label that people are going to put on you because you're different. I'm like, all right, well, I've been doing that my whole life. So this is cool. I'm going back to doing that. So that's how I walked out of 2022, man.
It's extremely interesting that you shed light on this because I actually had a conversation last night with one of my closest friends. He was a mentor within the supplement industry. He's now the vice president and I think chief operations officer of a huge supplement company. He actually runs multiple supplement companies, but he not only runs the supplement company portion, but they also have a nutritional or a supplement, a sports nutrition supplementation manufacturing plant. And he's one of the most successful individuals I know. I worked under him at one time. I was his right-hand man for years. I've even lived with this individual. And we had a conversation recently because we have always gravitated towards one another because we're workaholics. And, I shed light with him because this is my first year or my first period of time, entering 2023 that I'm not within the supplement industry. And now I'm all on my own. And I was just sharing some of my reflections with him and still, expressing to him that I had these workaholic traits that I thought I would be able to not get rid of. Cause I think everything in life can be looked at as a blessing and a curse. So, I struggle with not checking my emails constantly. I am constantly, and I have international clients. So I'm answering emails at 3 a.m. till 8 o'clock at night when I pass out, in front of my desk. However, I will say that he kind of, shifted my mindset on something, or shifted my perspective on something, because he's a workaholic himself, but he's immensely successful. And I'm not saying that the ends justify the means. However, he's in the position that he's in, running a company, doing international travel, having accounts nationwide, some of the biggest accounts in the world, because of his characteristics, because of his work ethic. And we got into a conversation that we don't have any vices in life. I don't do drugs. I don't, I don't drink. This is actually January 1st was my 10th year anniversary of being sober. So I've not consumed a lick of alcohol in 10 years. And that was a personal, not that I had an issue or anything. It was actually a
Personal choice.
Yeah. I had a friend kill someone in a drunk driving accident. And after that incident, January 1st, 2013 was the day that I got the call regarding it. And I just decided, from that moment forward, despite my not being actively involved in the accident itself, it was just something that shook up my life. And I decided going forward that I would be the positive influence and the person that my friends could count on when they were in that state of, in sobriety, essentially. And so, with that being said, we were talking about the fact that I don't have any vices, but if anyone had to characterize something as a vice, it's working too much. However, that has been something that has laid a foundation to all aspects of my life. It's allowed me to live a life, to provide for my family, to be able to garner friendships with individuals like yourself, individuals like him. It's gravitated me towards individuals that are like-minded. And so sometimes we're in our own echo chamber. And sometimes that can be a bad thing. So what I mean by the echo chamber is that you're hearing people that are saying the same thing. So the grind mentality, or you need to work more. But here's the thing. We have a lot of individuals in this space that make a bad impression on what online coaching is. They're kicking back on a beach, sipping Mai Tais, acting like this is a job in which you could just put in a couple hours a day. And I'll tell you, I've been at this 10 years. Next week will be my 10th year anniversary of me doing online coaching. And I never had that. I've never sat back. I've never only worked a couple hours a day. Obviously, I had a full-time, corporate profession alongside coaching. But even then, when I had a much smaller roster than I do now, I was always adamant about staying on top of my education. I'm involved in multiple, continuing education, graduate level courses as we speak, because I'm always looking to get to that next level. So really, this year, you kind of mentioned in an Instagram reel that you posted yesterday, and you tagged me in,
Yeah.
that you are embracing your workaholic tendencies. I'm right there with you, my friend. I don't think it's something that we should try away from. That's not to say that I don't believe in that I need to incorporate more balance, because I personally do within the constructs of my family, my faith, and there's different things. But really, when I looked at 2023, I'll kind of conceptualize how I look at goal setting, because the last week of every year, I really take a lot of time to internally reflect. So that is the one time of the year that I do not take on clients, like new clients. I wait until the beginning of the year to onboard them. I really spend a lot of time with friends, family, and loved ones. And that's exactly what I did. And we didn't even record the podcast. So there was no other outside distractions that I was looking towards. I also, within the context of my studies, it was review weeks for exams that I'll be having this week. So I wasn't actively in lectures as I usually would be. And really, when I look at goal setting, I always separate my goals out into three categories. And it's what I call the 3 F's. And this is something that I've been this is a mental framework that I've used for more than 10 years at this point. And how they go is I have three categories. I have my finances, and I just use F's because it's easy to remember and really conceptualize. But F stands for finances. And that's really my coaching business, my career goals, my professional endeavors, and my professional development. And then I have, the next F is family and faith, which includes my relationship with my friends, my family, my own relationship, my loved ones, and with God himself. And then also I have my final one, which is fitness, which includes all goals related to my physique, my health, and things of that sort, physical and mental health as well. And so really, when I looked back at it this year, I really decided that, the last year, I really, 2022, I still had a corporate job when I started the year. And then I went to the Physique Education Collective, which is coming up again. So it's about to be the 1 year anniversary of me presenting there, and then us going back there to Tampa this year, rather than Dallas, and presenting again. However, at this point last year, my focus was really on building my mentorship, doing a one-on-one mentorship. And I've had an immense amount of success within that. But how I do mentorships in the one-on-one capacity, it's very tailored to the individual client that I'm working with, whether it be a coach, a personal trainer, a gym owner, a fitness professional. And so
Right.
it's taken up in this immense amount of my time because it isn't a la carte. It isn't like, a lot of these mentorships where they're preset modules. You just go on, you watch them, and it's not what you need to learn. It's whatever that mentor decided you were going to learn for paying the price. And so everything is catered on that individual. So if they need to learn about menopausal clients, I'm doing updated research on that. Or if they're looking to dive into a different subsect of programming, I'm diving into that. And it's very time consuming on my end to build out these lectures because I really never get to utilize the same lecture, the same format, or even recycle these lessons with different mentees because they're all in different phases and stages in their career. So this year, what I really decided was I'm still going to do mentorships, but it's going to be much more selective in terms of how many I take on per semester, which essentially I break them up into 3-month mentorship periods. And I'm really going to focus more on one-on-one coaching because not only do I feel that that's my calling, but I've, in the last year, I reflected back and there was a lot of times, and I shared this with you, that I was turning away clients, putting them on a wait list, referring them to other coaches because I just didn't want to overcommit myself, especially the first half of the year when I was, committed to, I had a contract with a corporate entity. And so this year is really going to be about, building up my coaching roster, helping more individuals one-on-one, because I really do get a lot of fulfillment from that. And I feel like that's my greatest, skill set, is being able to work with people one-on-one, advance them wherever they are, especially when they're in the intermediate to advanced stage, and getting them to the next level of their life, both in terms of their physique development, their body composition, their health, and all things involved that. So I'm looking forward to really diving into that even more, and honestly bringing my roster to a level that it's never been, and being able, I'm not saying to, I'm not trying to compete with other coaches out there. I stay in my lane, but there's been many times that you're like, dude, I could see you being like, having even more clients, and I just haven't been able to devote the time because I'm spread out so thin. But now I'm really diving into that one thing, so it's coaching. I will do some mentorships, but it's not going to be as distracted as in when I started 2022 corporate. I had a corporate job, I had the mentorships, I had other entities that I was working on, then I had coaching. So it was spread out through my energy currency was divided amongst many projects. I had my hand in a lot of pockets, and this year it's really going all in on one-on-one coaching.
I'm glad to hear you are doing that, because I'll be real with you. If you're a coach, don't take offense to this, but the mentorship space, I'm not going to talk shit on yours. I'm not going to talk shit on any mentorship. I just think it's gotten to a point now that coaches have sold themselves the idea that they got to have a mentor. They have to have this. They have to have that. I'm kind of like, what the best part about business, at least to me, has been, is going and learning and fucking up and finding out for myself. You know what I mean? Those have been the best lessons, right? Like, us going through the things we did in 2022 made us go, you know what? I kind of like how I feel. And I kind of like these things. And I'm going to go back. And the only way we've ever found those things out is by experimenting. And I think that what good coaches like us need to get back to doing is creating impact in our communities, because those are the people who need us more. As far as I'm concerned, if you're a coach, if you can't sustain 20 clients pretty consistently, you don't really need a mentor. I'm sorry. I'm just saying it, but because what you could afford wouldn't be good quality. It's just my 2 cents. But you got anything else you want to wrap on, or you want to kick this baby off?
No, just to wrap up my year, I had a great, latter portion of my year. I will say I am someone that I am a man of routine, or man of consistency. So it was weird even taking 2 weeks off from to link it up with you, although we text on the side and stuff. But I'm glad to be back at it. I do want to wish before we get into things, a happy new year to our entire audience. I am extremely appreciative. I actually was on a podcast earlier this week, and I was reflecting back upon the last couple of years that I've really devoted, and any free time I've had, or a good chunk of my free time to podcasts. So I've actually, from 2022 or 2020 up until now, I've averaged 2 podcasts a week every single week. And it has given me the opportunity to link up with like-minded individuals that host podcasts. I mean, that was one of the entry points for a relationship with someone I consider one of my best friends, which is sitting across from me, Jeff Black. So, podcasting has been immensely integral in my relationship building, but also it's allowed me to connect with so many individuals. So I just want to, say genuinely from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all our listeners, those that continue to tune in, that they share our show, that they rate us, that they, share us on stories, and post, positive reflections on the information that they learn, or they share it with their friends. This is something that Jeff and I both run businesses. We're incredibly busy, and we know you are as well. So we really value your time. We appreciate that you value ours. And we're just really trying to bring a different, our goal when we created this was to bring clarity to, complex topics. And, it's great to be able to receive that feedback. And I'm at the point where I looked at so every week I generally will get inquiries, or I'll get questions that are posed in terms of the podcast. So anytime we have a Q&A or we have like additional things, I'll always be like, hey, I got this from some of our listeners. And I looked at over the last, we've been doing this podcast at this point for about 10 months. This will be episode 39. So we're going on 10 months in this podcast. And I have collected about 40 topics that we have yet to hit. So we're really pretty much stacked for the rest of the year, to be honest with you guys. But it's just to be able to get that type of interest in something that has not even been around a year. It is kudos to you guys for listening, for being involved and engaging with us, and knowing that we are the type of individuals that you guys can reach out to, can engage with, and can, rely on for information. I really appreciate that you guys have continued to support us, and we're looking forward to continuing to bring you guys value, information, and being able to bridge the gap between, research and information and practical application in 2023.
Yeah, we're going to do one weird episode. I'm trying to rank it with this guy named Jason Hommel, who did the copper revolution. He basically went through all the research about copper and how there really isn't any research on copper. It's pretty impressive. He's a little out there in woo-woo land, but I think he'd be a good conversation because he does have some research basis for what he has to say and the argument of people needing more copper. And I know Brandon would love to be prepared for that episode ahead of time so he could have a good conversation. But we're going to do some good shit, man. I think this is going to be a fun year, and it's going to really improve upon what we did in 2022.
Absolutely. You ready to kick this? Only up from here, my friend.
Yes, sir. All right. So, how to know if you're ready to tackle your fat loss goal in 2023, transforming your body health and your body and health in the new year. The importance of goal setting. Well, I kind of took a little different route this year. I only set a few. Normally I have a whole page, and they can be simple stuff like learn this, watch that, you know what I mean? Like things like that. But this year I only set to a few. One big rule for myself is I'm not going to associate with people who can't rule themselves in business. Meaning I know if they're just not put together as they pretend to be on social media, I'm not fucking with them. So, that's one of those conversations I could find out if you ever want to know and have a few drinks. I mean, I'll tell you your face, especially if I got a joint in me as well. But I think that goal setting is very important. Steve Kotler, who wrote The Art of Impossible, he did a whole book about talking about goal setting and how important it is, especially from the scientific standpoint and what the research shows, especially as far as accessing a flow state. You want the goals to be where they stretch you just enough, but they don't frustrate you too much where you won't go back to them. And I think people set unrealistic goals, especially in the health and fitness journey. Like, I'm going to drop 30 pounds in 30 days. I'm like, well, that's fantastic. And the stock market's going to go 33% in 30 days is my wish, but that doesn't happen. So with that being said, B, what do you kind of feel on the importance of goal setting for your side? I mean, I think everybody in the fitness industry, all coaches know it's important, but how do you differentiate between people and their goals to help set the clients up for success? I guess is the way to say it, because your clients say all these goals, but are you giving them the hard facts back of like, that won't work, or that's great to have, but maybe change it this way? Or do you just accept the goals at face value and just push them on the goals?
No, so it's going to be really person specific, but I think it's really important to really describe or to extrapolate why, goal setting is so important to begin with, because a lot of people set out intentions, or they'll throw out these ideas out there, but they're not really intentional in terms of their actual goal setting behaviors and the way they go about it. And in order to start the process of improving our physique and health outcomes, the first step that we need to take is to set body composition, fitness, and health related goals, and really be narrow, focused and locked in on them. And goal setting is an extremely important part of the process of making the necessary changes, which will allow us to improve and make progress, as our goals directly impact our habits and behaviors, as well as how well we perform these actions on a consistent basis, as our goals provide us with a target to actively aim at and work towards. And that's really what I see. I see a lot of people that they'll set goals, or they'll throw things out there. Hey, I want to lose 30 pounds, or I want to get lean, or I want to step on stage this year, but they don't really have a plan of action. They don't have goals that tie to a plan of action, to a why, and all these other things that are necessary. And when it really comes down to it, setting goals can help provide us with a sense of purpose, which can drastically influence our desire to improve our habits and modify our behaviors, which is a much more reliable way to ensure we make progress, rather than solely relying on motivation to drive us forward. And that's another major mistake a lot of people have, is that they make goals in a time period, or they'll make them right before the new year, where they're highly motivated and like everything's going well in life. Like they just finished, they're on vacation from say work, and they just relaxed with their family and friends. They've just reset from their diet because they've been eating off plan. And now they have all this, physical and mental energy, and they're like, oh, I'm at a high on life, and now I want to go into these goal settings. So it's really important to not only focus on the goals that we had, but also focus on the plan of action in terms of improving our habits and behaviors. And really, when we look at it, I'm going to kind of tie into or focus solely in on physique, health, and body composition related goals, because that is really what we cover in this podcast. And that's what we do as coaches. But research has also found that setting goals prior to approaching a fitness related task can decrease not only our adherence, but our ability to achieve our goals. So it's not just about being able to set goals, but it's also about you're never going to get results and actually be able to achieve the goals if you can't adhere to the process needed to make those tangible improvements and see the results that you're looking for. So, for example, in a study by Wilson, researchers used a goal setting intervention to examine the impact setting goals has on motivation and adherence during an exercise program. So, in this training study, they took 60 recreational exercisers. So, these were individuals who already regularly exercised. They were engaged in fitness to begin with. So, it wasn't like they just got them off the couch. But what they did was they randomly assigned them to either a process goal group, an outcome goal group, or a no goal control group. And they had each trainee complete an intrinsic motivation inventory. So internal drivers, essentially. They did this test both at the beginning and the end of the training program, and then also monitored their level of adherence throughout the program, as well as at 3 months and 6 months following the actual study itself. And the result of the study found that the trainees in the process oriented group, who were really focused in on the daily to-dos, like the daily tasks that were alongside their goal, not just on the result, they scored significantly higher in their interest and enjoyment and their perceived choice in the activity itself. So in the resistance training study in and of itself, they experienced significantly lower pressure and tension when approaching their goal and had significantly greater adherence compared to the outcome goal and control groups. So these results reinforce the importance and benefit of proper goal setting prior to taking on a physique improvement intervention.
Do you think, well, I guess want to get in this one. What is the most common goal during the start of the year? That probably feels better where I was going to go. My next question.
All right. So, man, this, like I mentioned previously, this month will mark my 10th year of coaching. And what I've seen over the last decade or so is that the most common goal individuals have around the new year. So keep in mind, we're in the first week of the new year. So it's the start of 2023. And generally, what I really see people come to me with in terms of a physique or a body composition related goal is they want to lose body fat and body weight. So, really, it's no coincidence that 9 out of 10 times when new clients reach out to us, Jeff, I'm sure you can confirm this, when they reach out to you, to both of us for coaching, especially around this time period, they're solely focused on fat loss. And now the caveat here is just because a client wants to achieve a specific goal, like losing a considerable amount of fat, doesn't mean they're ready for it and are going to respond to it. And so when it comes down to it, there's going to be people that reach out to us and they're going to be in a good spot physically and mentally, and they'll be ready for a fat loss phase. So that is a fine goal for them to set and for us to fine endeavor or phase for us to go into. However, there's a lot of others that come to us in a bad state, whether it be physically and or mentally. So if someone isn't in the right place, mentally, physically, whatever it may be, I'm not going to try to force the body into a phase that it isn't ready for. As I always say, and this is something that I continue to build my coaching principles and my motto on, is a healthy body is a responsive body. So if a client isn't in a healthy spot, their body isn't going to respond. And instead, I've seen a benefit in taking time to prime their internal physiology first, and then we can work towards their aesthetic physique related goal. So despite the fact that many who contact me have the desire to go right into a fat loss phase at the start of the year, or anytime in the course of the year, this is applicable not only now but in any time of the year. There's a lot of times people will contact me with the goal of losing fat. However, it's just they're not in the right position physically and mentally to actually achieve a lean physique. And often I noticed that there are a couple common situations that new clients are in when they initially contact me for coaching with the goal of losing body fat. They could either be someone who has spent years chronically dieting and over restricting themselves, which has resulted in going through these repetitive cycles of weight loss and weight regain, which hasn't led to any sustainable improvements in their body composition. And due to these like fad and cyclical dieting strategies that they've used over the years, they haven't been able to strike enough of a balance in their approach to maintain a lean physique despite years of investing their time, their energy, their effort, and even more so their money into their goals. So they've had these goals, they've invested all these resources into them, but they've never gotten anything tangible back. So they're really disappointed, and they're kind of continuing to do the same thing and getting the same results and not realizing maybe I need to change my approach instead of just keep banging my head against the wall. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'll have other individuals that come to me that they're overfed yet undernourished, meaning they're eating enough calories that it's resulting in them carrying a much higher body fat percentage than they'd like. So they don't have the body composition that they really desire. They're carrying a lot higher level of adiposity than they want, or then that's even healthy for them. Yet they're suffering from micronutrient deficiencies, which can often impact their hormonal health and balance. It can impact their energy levels, how they feel, their quality of life. And so, despite both of these types of clients having different dieting histories, in both situations, these individuals are in poor or suboptimal state of metabolic, internal, and physical health. And many of these individuals also have a poor relationship with food, which results in unhealthy eating behaviors, such as engaging in overeating or binge eating, followed by over restricting. So, both from a physical aspect and a mental aspect, they're not in a good place. So not only are they not ready for fat loss, for a fat loss phase from a physical perspective, but they're also not ready for an energy deficit and the restriction that comes along with an extended period of being in a calorie deficit. And then alongside that, what I noticed with a lot of many clients, especially at the start of the year, especially because like we got to think about what precedes the new year. It's a holiday period, so a lot of people are out of their routine. They've been staying out later. They've been drinking more, and so often these individuals, they're underslept, they're stressed out, they're fatigued, and they're living a lower quality of life than they want. Which is why I take what I refer to as a health-centric approach to coaching that goes far beyond just the X's and O's of calories and macros for nutrition and sets and reps for training, and instead looks to improve their body composition by optimizing not only their training and nutrition, but also how they approach their lifestyle as a whole. Because really, when it comes down to my goal with every client that I work with is to improve their health and their habits. I want to positively modify their behaviors and ultimately optimize their lifestyle as a whole. As what we have to realize when it comes down to our body composition and health, it isn't just determined by what we do, in the gym 1 hour per day, but really it's influenced by the entirety of what you do, do within your decisions, your actions, your habits, and your behaviors across the entire course of the day. So this is why, as a coach, I feel that my role, and I do, believe that this is a role for all of us as coaches in general, is we're not only just trying to give a client what they want. So when a new client comes to us, a lot of times they have these requests or they have these goals. And sometimes it's really important as a coach to have those hard conversations and say, listen, this isn't realistic or this isn't feasible right now. And it's not that, I don't believe in you or I don't want to help you get to this goal, but there's a big difference between what someone wants and what someone needs. And really, sometimes the last thing that a new client needs based on where they're coming to us at is to go right into a fat loss phase. So it's really important to realize this in order to set up a client for success in terms of losing fat and really get across to them that they need to start the diet or a fat loss phase in a good place, both physically and mentally, to really ensure that they're going to be successful in the process. Because a lot of times people, they overlook this, and especially coaches, like they have someone come to them, they're interested in their coaching, and they see it as another opportunity to sign a new client. And really what's important to me at this point in my career is to be extremely objective with those that come to me. And, if they're in a state that they're good and ready to go into fat loss, by all means, I'm here to help you get to your goal. However, if I know that you're suffering with a lot of anchors and bottlenecks that are holding you back, the last thing I'm going to do is set you up for failure, because a lot of these individuals have a dieting history, which has included a lot of failures, which has broken them down physically and mentally and really caused them to second guess their abilities, their capabilities, their self-efficacy. So really what I'm trying to do is set people up for not only short-term success, so not only being able to be successful in the phase itself, but long-term.
You said something earlier about wants and needs. How do you help a client clarify wants and needs from a coaching perspective?
Yeah, so really it comes down to doing a really in-depth assessment of where they're at. So it's looking at objective and subjective feedback. It's looking over their biofeedback. And then, a lot of times what it is it's being objective as a coach. It's telling them the hard things. So for instance, if I have a new client that comes to me and I do an intake on them, I do a consultation, and I'm looking over their objective and their subjective feedback, meaning their objective feedback is their health metrics. So their blood pressure is elevated. They're hypertensive. They have high fasted glucose. They're showing signs of insulin resistance or pre-diabetes. They have a really high resting heart rate. So they're showing signs of sympathetic dominance. And then I look at their blood work. So now, there's another subjective marker, and their triglycerides are out of range. They have fasting insulin. They're showing all these signs of metabolic dysfunction. And then from the subjective side, they're not sleeping well. They feel like they have lack of energy. They're feeling lethargic after meals. They have all these signs that their body isn't in a great state physiologically. And then when we go into, say, their dieting history, or we go into the relationship with food, they're struggling with binge eating. These are all signs that they're not in a great state. However, oftentimes these individuals, they think that to rectify this, all they have to do is to go into a fat loss phase. And really, when it comes down to it, is we have to be honest and objective with them and say, listen, I understand that that's your goal, and I'm here to help you with that. However, you're not in the right position physically, physiologically, and mentally to tackle that. And really, what we're going to do is we're going to be finding, or we're going to be hitting a lot of stopgaps in the system if we do try to force the body into the adaptation that you're looking for. And this is where we have to peel back the layers of the onion and really take a step back and realize that it's better to prioritize your health and the bottlenecks and anchors within your programming first, and rectify those issues before we tackle a physique-based goal.
I agree with that. I like the way you put that out there. How do you determine if a client is ready to diet for a fat loss phase? Do you have a questionnaire for that? Or do you just kind of like go with it and see? I think like this is why I tell clients when I work with people, I always say, hey, because I use a data tracker, I use a Google Sheet. Most coaches online space do that. I have found that like when I watch it for at least 2 or 3 weeks, I can have a better idea where to go. And then I talk to clients and like do like a 1 month follow up and kind of like, all right. Now it's different if you get a competitor and they're coming to you and they're already locked in and all that. But if you just get a person who even might be a weekend warrior gym person, great physique, but just not care to compete. When you see their habits and you track some of that stuff, you see holes or areas they could shore up so you could really know where to go. How do you approach it?
Yeah, so I'm going to be honest with you, my man. I try to get all that information right off the bat. So, in order to determine if a client is truly ready for a fat loss phase, I like to assess and I like to look over certain aspects of their lives and their current programs when they come to me to make sure they're in the right state to start a diet, or to determine if they're not in the right state. Because I found a lot of individuals who just rush into a fat loss phase, or they just rush into a goal specific phase without thinking critically about whether or not they're really ready and prepared to enter that goal, that specific phase. And so what I really see with that is I'll look over someone's dieting history, for instance, or just like what they've done previously. And a lot of times it is filled with a lot of failures, whether it's self-proclaimed failures or they've had a lot of recidivism where they've lost some weight, they've regained it. And that's kind of like their history. And that's really not only due to the approach that they've taken, but also a lack of critical thinking on their end previous to that. So often, like this type of rushed approach is done without objectively considering if the client is in the right state physically, mentally, hormonally, and metabolically, which is one reason why so many dieters struggle with losing fat during the dieting phase, and then even more so with keeping fat off once the fat loss phase ends. And that's what we see. That's why we hear these statistics that 95% of diets fail, because no one learns maintenance. But it's not only because they don't approach the post-diet phase correctly, but also because they didn't approach the pre-diet phase correctly. So the diet before the diet, wasn't nailed. So how can they expect to nail the diet after the diet? Because they really haven't cemented any habits and behaviors which are going to set them up for long-term success. They've just pulled these levers and these shortcuts to try to get short-term success. And what does that lead you to? Short-term outcomes and short-term recidivism. So whenever I'm assessing whether a client is ready for a fat loss diet, I like to run through, I have like a checklist that I go through, and I'll share it with you guys today. And essentially what I do is I run through this checklist and then I do a needs analysis on my end to determine if going into a fat loss phase will be an effective use of both our time and also our energy. And is it going to be something that that specific client's going to respond favorably to and see results from? Because the last thing I want to do is waste not only a client's time, but also, and obviously their time, their investment, but also have them discouraged as a result of not yet, going into another process where they failed, where they're failing and they see themselves failing. And it just, reinforcing those self-limiting beliefs that they often come to me. So generally I'll start with assessing aspects of a client's nutrition first. So the first thing I like to dig into is a person's dieting history. And my goal is, with this is to find out when was the last time that this individual dieted, how long their previous fat loss phase went, how successful it was, how did it go, and then how long it's been since they completed their last diet. As ideally, we don't want to start a fat loss phase unless we've been eating in a surplus or at least at maintenance for a consistent period of time and haven't been in a deficit for a few months at the minimum. From there, I like looking at not, so I just looked at their dieting history, but I also want to see what their dieting experience is like, because just because you've done something a bunch of times doesn't mean you're proficient at it. And we see chronic dieters that really haven't nailed any of the habits and behaviors to become a successful dieter. So, along with finding out their dieting history, I want to know about a person's experience level with dieting, as dieting is a skill that we can get better at over time. So if an individual has successfully completed multiple fat loss phases in the past and has been able to adhere to a deficit for an extended period of time and really see tangible fat loss as a result of their adherence, their habits, and their consistency, then it's a good indication, that they have a solid foundation of habits that will serve them well in future dieting phases. So it's kind of like a green light for me. Like, listen, this person, if I put them in a fat loss phase, they have all the fundamental principles nailed down that are going to set them up for success. So all I have to do is pull the levers and guide them in the right direction. However, at the other end of the spectrum, we have a lot of clients that come to us. And if someone has had a poor experience with dieting and has had multiple failed diets in the past, I'm going to want to focus on improving upon their dietary approach, their habits around nutrition, and the things that have held them back or caused them to fail in the past before we enter a deficit again. From there, I want to look at their relationship with food and their nutritional habits, and their habits around food in general. Because this is really, when it comes down to nutrition, this is like the last nutritional component I like to assess. And really what I'm trying to do is I want to see how a person's relationship with food has been in the past. So, previous history, but also what is it like right now in the present moment? Because if someone has a poor relationship with food, the last thing that's going to help them resolve this poor relationship and their poor habits around nutrition is to enter an energy deficit where they'll need to restrict their food intake to achieve their goal of fat loss. This is the last, time period, or this is going to be a very unlikely time period for them to really improve their habits, their behaviors, and even their mindset, like how they view food. So I'm really going to want to focus first on that before we go into a deficit, before I start, restricting energy intake or, eliminating certain, calories or macronutrients. And then once I've assessed their nutrition data, I like to then assess their current body composition and their training. And that kind of goes hand in hand together. So really, when it comes down to it, most individuals who have the goal of entering a fat loss phase do so with the goal of attaining a lean muscular physique. But in order to achieve this goal, we have to ensure they have a solid foundation of muscle to begin with. And I find that many have the desire of getting leaner, yet when they describe, or even when, like, I'll have clients that will send me images of people that, whether it be from their gym or from Instagram, whatever it may be, they'll show me their goal physique. And generally, it's one that has a lot more muscle than they currently have. Yes, the individual that they're showing me, whether it be the Instagram fitness model, male or female, yes, they're lean, but they also have a ton more muscle than this person has. So when I have someone come to me in this situation, I often find that focusing our efforts on first devoting a period of time to building muscle allows them to be in a much better spot to attain this goal physique that they're aiming towards once we do enter a fat loss phase. So I prioritize muscle building first, and then we can look to, fat loss. So then, along with assessing their current level of muscle mass, I want to make sure that their training is progressive and productive, and that their recovery is in a good spot prior to entering a diet. Because dieting is something, a lot of people often overlook, the fact that dieting can have a large downstream effect essentially on our recovery capacity. So if someone's not recovering properly while eating in a surplus of calories, it's an indicator that other areas of their program, whether that be their training programming, their total weekly volume, their split, their setup, or their sleep quality is off. And then the last thing I'm assessing to see if someone's ready for a fat loss phase and really ready to enter a deficit is their health status. And oftentimes I encounter individuals who have, these ambitious physique goals and want to enter a dieting phase to accomplish these goals, yet really have no business doing so and have yet to earn the right to diet based on the state they're in when they contact me. So often they aren't in a healthy spot internally. Their sleep patterns and habits are completely off. They don't have their training and nutrition dialed in, and their biomarkers like their blood glucose, their blood pressure, and the resting heart rate aren't even in a healthy range for an inactive individual, let alone for someone who expects to be efficiently oxidizing and losing body fat to optimize their body composition. So they're not even a good state physically from a health perspective, but they want these really ambitious goals. And really, we have to make sure that your ambitions and where you are, they match one another, or they sync up. And So this is why one of the first things I do with new clients is I have them start paying attention to and tracking objective metrics of health, such as their resting heart rate and their blood glucose. And if these aren't in a good start, good spot at the start of them coming to me and working with me, my focus in their programming from a nutrition, a training, a cardio, a movement, and even like a lifestyle perspective is on improving health first, as a healthy body is a more responsive body. So I find that many overlook the fact that if their internal health is not in a good place, their body will not grow muscle or lose fat efficiently. And this is because in order to improve our body composition, we need to be able to apply stress to it. And these stresses, like a lot of people think about stress as like this mental construct, but stress can even apply to like our diet, our training, our
Mhm.
cardio. These are all stressors on the system, whether we look at them as such or not. And so not only do we need to apply these stresses, but we also need to be able to adapt to these stressors to see the results and outcomes we're looking for, because it's really not the process of just adding these variables in, but it's also the process of adaptation. So adaptation would be muscle growth. Fat loss is an adaptation. Improved aerobic capacity or aerobic fitness. These are all adaptations, but the body has to be able to recover from these stresses in order to elicit the result that you're looking for. Now, the issue is if your body is already stressed from an internal health perspective, your body already has an excessive amount of stress to deal with. And this is often the case that I find a lot of individuals in. They're already super stressed from a lifestyle perspective, a lack of stress management perspective, from not, having their nutrition dialed in, all these other variables. Yet they think that their body's going to respond to the external stresses of increasing their training or going into a deficit, and that's really not going to happen. So the healthier our body is, the more likely it'll be to adapt to our diet and our training and all the other things that we're doing, and the more likely we will be to see the positive results we're looking for. So really what it comes down to is putting someone in a spot where they're going to be most likely to succeed, and getting that across to them. Like, listen, I understand that you have these goals and you think that this is the route that you should be going, but the reason that you have yet to accomplish that, the goals that you're coming to me for, you're telling me that you've been at this for 10, 15 years. You've tried this multiple years in a row. However, you've never gotten the results you're looking for. Let's look at the bottlenecks and the gaps or the holes in your approach or your previous approaches, and let's improve upon that moving forward.
What do you do if they're not ready to enter the phase then?
Yeah. So, honestly, one of the most productive things that I have clients do, and, this really takes a shifting of their focus. Because remember, a lot of people around this time of year, especially, they're focused on fat loss. But when someone isn't ready to enter a deficit and lose fat, whether that be due to their physical or mental limitations and the anchors that we need to work on first, what I really like them to do is focus on recomping their body through building muscle. So, seeing as we can build muscle either at calorie balance or in a calorie surplus, this phase specific goal of recomp allows us time to work on the anchors holding them back while also improving their body composition, improving their metabolic resilience, building better habits, and creating a better foundation, all of which will serve them in future fat loss phases. So, I'm building the foundation first to potentiate their progress going forward. We also have to realize that, I really like this expression. We can't, sculpt a pebble. Essentially, like, we can't sculpt the pebble. So if you don't have enough muscle, if you don't have the foundation set, and your goal is to attain a lean muscular physique, you first need to focus on building a muscular foundation that you can then cut from and develop an even better looking body from in later phases. So one mistake I commonly see is individuals who get so focused on losing weight, especially from like a scale weight perspective, they're chasing that weekly and monthly scale weight, regardless, by any means necessary. I'll deplete all my glycogen. I'll, cut out all carbs, whatever it may be. I'll go keto. And they do so, but they don't prioritize building or maintaining muscle. And they also don't prioritize fueling their training. So they force their body into a deficit and force their body to lose weight. And at the end, they may have lost some weight and they may have lost some body fat in the process, but they also have lost some muscle. So they end up as a smaller, weaker, worse version of themselves rather than being patient and taking the time to build a physique they'll eventually be happy with. So they're taking the shortcut rather than taking what they consider in their mind to be a long route, but really it's getting them to the end outcome that they can sustain in a more efficient, time conducive manner. So in order to attain the lean muscular physique most men and women come to me for, we need to have enough muscle first. And a benefit of, taking clients and shifting their goal from purely weight loss to body recomposition is we can achieve this goal at either maintenance calories or at a slight calorie surplus, which allows us to develop consistency and better habits and behaviors without an element of calorie restriction added in. So I get them from being in this restriction-based mindset into more of an abundance-based mindset. Let's build muscle. Let's fuel your training. Let's get you eating more fruits and vegetables. So it's additive rather than a subtractive model. And I also find that this really works well for a lot of clients because a lot of us, and this has happened to me too. So I have to be objective and upfront about this. And I think we all suffer with this when we are type A driven, goal oriented individuals, as often we want the best of both worlds. So with many of my male clients, they want to build their chest and arms, for instance, while getting shredded. While many of my female clients, they want to build bigger glutes while also getting leaned and toned. Now, here's the issue. The thing is with many of these individuals, they've already been in the gym for quite some time. So likelihood of them building a ton of muscle and really bringing up these lagging body parts is, while being in a deficit is lower and unlikely. So this is why it's important that if your goal is to build or bring up a weak body part, we need to focus on that first before we worry about losing body fat and losing weight. Because being in a deficit, and we've spoken about this on previous podcasts, it's a catabolic state. It's breaking down tissues, whereas muscle growth is an anabolic process. So these are kind of like contrasting states where we can't optimize one while being in the other. So we can't optimize muscle growth while being in a caloric deficit, trying to really efficiently lose body fat. So I really find that kind of changing the focus and getting them out of the mindset of we're going to go right into fat loss at the start of the year and really focusing on body recomposition, on building muscle, on eating to fuel performance, on improving performance allows us to use this as a time that we can focus on improving many other aspects of their lifestyle and routine, such as their training quality and their efficiency of their training, their daily movement practice. So I can get them into hitting a step count goal. We can dial in their sleep routine, which usually would be negatively impacted if we went right into a fat loss phase. I can help them with their stress management skills. I can also help them with their habits around meal prep. And then when we really look at it, all of these habits that I've been working on throughout the course of this body recomposition or this building phase will set them up for better success both in the short and long term. Because in order to be successful long term, we need to develop consistency with all of these habits. As if you never learn how to be consistent, you'll never create a body transformation you'll be able to maintain. Because really, when it comes down to it, if you lack consistency, you'll never be able to make it to your goal, but you'll also struggle in the process. So both in the short and long term, you're not getting the outcomes you're looking for. So this is where I found a real big benefit from shifting our focus from purely fat loss to focusing on building muscle and adding positive habits first that will serve a client long term, instead of just focusing on subtracting things and losing weight and subtracting calories right from the start.
Next one. Ooh, I like the last one a lot. How to properly set health and fitness goals for the new year. I'll let you give your take and then I'll give mine. Mine will be the smart ass version, I'm sure.
All right. So really when it comes down to goal setting, this is something that I kind of go through a phasic process with clients. And it's really going to be dependent on the client psychology, their perspective, and then also their experience level. I have certain individuals that I really don't need to speak about goal setting because they're ahead of the jump. But often I do find that a lot of individuals struggle with goal setting and with proper goal setting. So there's a difference between just throwing intentions out into the universe and really properly setting health and fitness related goals and then planning, really getting a plan of attack behind them. And that's where I think coaching, or as coaches, we can guide people in the proper manner. So in order to properly set health and fitness goals in the new year, you should look to set goals not just based on what you want in the current moment or the motivation you feel in the here and now, but based on the vision you have for yourself later on down the road. So really what I like people doing is thinking 3, 6, 12 months from this current moment. And it's also beneficial to put time and effort into setting these goals, as many set goals based on momentary motivation. But what we have to realize is motivation will come and go, and motivation ebbs and flows. So if you set all your goals when you're motivated and you expect to be able to rely on this motivation to accomplish them, you're literally setting yourself up from success, or setting yourself up for failure from the start. And really, what I personally like to have clients do is set goals in an intentional and thought out manner where they have intrinsic drivers for what they're looking to achieve. And then I also like clients to do 2 things when it comes to their goals, which is to create a goal hierarchy and to use approach oriented goals rather than avoidance oriented goals. And so, I'll break both of those constructs down, really how I kind of describe them to clients and how I get them to view them, because I think it's something that could benefit everyone out in the audience. So when it comes to a goal hierarchy, this is essentially a way to determine how to prioritize your goals, because often people don't have just one singular goal. It's very rare that someone has just one goal. Like, I just want to build muscle and they're solely focused on that for 12 months. It's generally, they have all these goals. So that's where we really have to decide, what area, which what are the areas which you need the most improvement on, or what are the areas which would deliver the best bang for their buck or the most return on your investment. And really what I like to do is I like to go after things that are going to build a solid foundation first before reaching for stretch goals. So for instance, if I have someone that wants to step on stage, but they've never completed even a successful mini cut or fat loss phase, let's focus first on developing the habits that are going to set you up for success within a fat loss phase. And let's run a prep before the prep phase where you successfully achieve getting to, say, beach lean or lifestyle lean previous to us getting into a contest prep. The contest prep would be the stretch goal. However, the lifestyle lean and completing a successful fat loss phase would provide you with the foundation first. And then I also like to have clients create approach goals rather than what are called avoidance goals. So when goals are framed as approach oriented, we have a higher likelihood of success than when they're avoidance oriented. And really, when it comes down to it, an approach oriented goal is a goal that has to do with something, where an avoidance oriented goal is the goal not to do something. So if improving your body composition and health is a goal, a way of framing that in an approach oriented manner would be to do stuff like, or to phrase things like, I want to improve my body composition by gaining muscle and losing fat. I want to increase my strength and my performance in the gym. I want to increase my fruit and vegetable consumption. I want to be more active in my day-to-day life and hit a particular step count. Whereas if you were to frame your goals in an avoidance oriented framing, it would be stuff like, I want to stop being overweight. I want to stop being so weak. I want to stop being so lazy. So goals that are based on trying to avoid or get away from something are much less likely to succeed. And we see in multiple areas of research that if your goal is motivated based on not liking yourself and what you want to avoid, you're much less likely to be successful in terms of your outcomes. And this has been shown in research, directly related and actually looking at New Year's resolutions and the mindset in which resolutioners approach their goals in. So, for example, there was a large scale study on New Year's resolutions just 2 years ago by Oscarson et al., I believe. And it found that when resolutioners set approach oriented goals, they were much more likely to succeed than when they set avoidance oriented goals. And this is why I'm a big proponent of having goals that have you aiming at moving towards something positive rather than trying to run away or move away from something negative, because how you approach your goals and how likely you are to attain them is heavily influenced by your mindset. And that's why I always say we cannot separate physiology and psychology. Like, the one influences the other. So when you're entering a process, you have to make sure that you're framing your goals so that, you could frame your goals in two different ways, but get two different outcomes. So you can frame them in a way that can make or break you, essentially based on your mindset. And so when it comes down to it, a lot of times I'll apply this to different phases, whether it be a fat loss phase, or a building phase with myself and then other clients. It's especially helpful when a client is trying to get leaner and fitter. So during these phases, I have them focus on the habits, the behaviors, and lifestyle needed to get leaner, and the positive habits they can do to get to their goals. So this includes thinking about things in terms of daily wins, such as focusing on nutrient dense, low energy dense food sources such as lean meats, fruits, and vegetables, staying well hydrated, and getting in their daily water intake. Other things from a training perspective, would be lifting weights regularly in a progressive manner, or getting in daily movement, whether that be through walks or cardio on a frequent basis. And this is an example of an approach-oriented mindset, whereas many make the mistake of viewing their fat loss phases in an avoidance-oriented mindset, where all they focus on is not being fat or hating their body or needing to restrict themselves. And this is where it can be really advantageous to stop thinking about things in a way of what you don't want or what you want to avoid, and instead think about what you can do and how it can benefit you. So you're really focusing on moving towards something, becoming a fitter, better version of yourself, rather than running away from things that you have insecurities about, or that you're lack confidence in, or that you hate about yourself. Like, this mental framing is so important, especially when it comes to goal setting.
See, I just go like this. I'm like, what were your last goals of, say, the last 5 years? And then they share them with me. And I'll be like, of these goals you just shared, how many of them did you hit? And which ones? And they usually miss a lot of them. And I'm like, so then it's a question of, are the goals, what stops you from hitting the goals? I really work on the psychology side of that with people, because everyone has their goals and their dreams. And who am I to say no to that? Because I had to learn how to walk again after doctors told me that just wasn't going to happen. And I defied them multiple times in a lot of things I've done with my body. So I've seen some crazy shit done, and you have too. So I really try to challenge them. And I get what the research says. I see it all the time in my gym. I mean, all these things you say correlate. But I think when you're coaching, your goal is to bring out the best in the person. In order to bring out the best in the person, they have to see the worst of what they are. And I agree to that. Everyone's got a different take. Jordan Peterson says it a different way. You know, if you're in a relationship, someone you get to see the best of them and the worst of them. And that's like a harrowing experience. But think about it this way. The only way people can get to where they really want to, I think, is by understanding that side to them that they failed at and embracing and pushing forward. So I usually talk to them about that angle and work with them on understand that. And what does it really mean to them to achieve it? Why don't they keep that promise to themselves?
Yeah, no, I do realize and I do accept the ideology or the concept of helping people acknowledge and be aware of their faults, their failures, and their inadequacies. However, you're not going to hate yourself to a better body composition. Very few people, maybe bodybuilders, but the average person that we work with isn't going to hate themselves to improvement. And often I find, even if we look at research on top level athletes, it's those that have an improvement based mindset and actually have perfectionist strivings rather than perfectionist, preoccupations that do better. So perfectionist striving is trying to be the best version of yourself, but not beating yourself up. However, when it's there's another term in the literature that I'm blanking out on, but it's another form of perfectionism, but it's essentially based on a fear of failure, a fear of, things that you don't do well, and really trying to make sure that you're not disappointing yourself and others. They actually do worse, even in top level athletes. So really when it comes down to it, I try to get people to not be as hard on themselves, but also not be in complete denial of the things that they failed on in the past. There's always room for working on things and improvement. However, I really do like the approach oriented mindset, because often it's a much bigger anchor when you can look at the daily wins and reinforce the positive behaviors you're having, rather than, if you only have, say, like with the avoidance mindset, I need to stop eating this because this is making me fat and I don't want to be fat. Whereas you could focus on, improving your nutritional habits by adding things in. I'm going to eat more fruits and vegetables. I'm going to hit a protein goal per day. I'm going to make sure that I have a bolus of protein in each of my meals throughout the day instead of snacking and grazing. These are things that are going to crowd out some of the bad nutritional or poor nutritional habits you have. And it's more about adding things rather than subtracting them. So I really, I found in my experience that taking more of that approach oriented mindset, and then also helping people with an abundance-based mindset, has been more beneficial, at least with the clientele that I've worked with.
I guess by talking to people about why they didn't get why they did not accomplish what they want to accomplish year after year after year, that isn't getting someone to hate themselves. That's getting someone to sit there and look at themselves and say, hey, why didn't you keep this promise to yourself? What stopped you from doing that? I actually disagree completely with fucking people being treated that way with gloves, man. That's like kid glove stuff. Why arrive safely at death? Like, I wrote about this the other day because this book has been so transformational to me. I'm glad I took every fucking chance I ever did. I mean, when I work out, I run a chance of breaking shit all the time. I don't give a shit. And I think that's why I try to embed into people that I work with. Like, look, you have two lenses you can look at through this life. You can look at scarcity or you can look at abundance, and either one leads you to death, but one leads you to death without as many regrets. I'm quite positive about. And I know that because when you train people like we have from all walks of life, and you hear those 60 and 70-year-olds talk to you, the ones who live pretty freely don't really have many regrets. Like, yeah, man, I'm just kicking it till it's time to go.
Yeah, I trained the 74 on the positives in life. Yeah, they take their bumps. They take their bumps and they keep moving on it, and they're not focused on the things that have held them back.
But fear of failure is ultimately piling on regrets, because on the other side of failure is things you want to know. And I've learned that a lot. Like, business taught me that, and maybe that's because we got into bodybuilding and fitness such a young age. You got into sport where you had to go all the way to the end, Brandon, and fail. And no matter how hard your heart wanted you to push, little Brandon couldn't do that weight one more rep. And you had to wait till the next fucking workout to go get down to business. And you had to keep embracing that over and over and over. Think about how many god awful preps you did in the beginning that you're ashamed of what you look like compared to what you could look like once you did it, right? And I think that as we get older, we live in a box of being scared rather than a box of just learning to be more creative and colorful and just getting out there. And I think that that's a key aspect that coaching could change with people. Why didn't this matter to you? Why didn't these promises matter? And why are you so scared of keeping them? And I think that's what it comes down to a lot of people. I think it's a fear thing. And that would be my advice to follow up on the last question today, last topic we'll talk. Advice for succeeding with goals in the new year. I think that I tell everybody that my goal has been this year's I sent my clients out a message every week to remind them of their check-in. And I always tell them you only win if you do this. And that's it, right? Because you and I know that. If you don't check in with me, I don't know shit. And even if you fall off the wagon, my job is to help pick you back up and be like, okay, well, what happened? Like, why does this keep happening? Like why every 4 weeks do you tend to go on a weekend bender where you can't even find out where your keys are for like a month? You know what I mean? Or whatever that case might be. But everybody, my rally cry for this year is keep the promise to yourself. And I think a lot of people don't do that, man. They set these goals and then the word end up meaning shit to them. And then their self-esteem crumbles. And I wrote about this in my book, like the self-mirror test. When you achieve discipline and you keep promises to yourself, you don't mind looking at yourself in the mirror. But when you break those promises to yourself and you don't have discipline and things end up not meaning shit to you, guess what? You got low self-esteem and eventually you're doing everything you don't want to do because it doesn't serve you. And those are like hard concepts in reality for people to grasp. I figured out like life's not as comfortable as we want to make believe it should be. And I think that you're only here and for as God knows, as long as we know, which we don't, why not just be a little bit more free and have a little bit more fun? I think if people took fitness more of like I have to fail a little bit to find out what works for me approach, I think you'd see more success in our space. And that is more or less what I think you could do for succeeding with some of your goals this year. Set goals that stretch you, but don't set the same damn goals you failed at for the last 5 years. Or really examine those goals and go, why the fuck did I fail at these goals for 5 years? And have an honest journaling conversation with yourself and go from there.
Yeah, so I have two different philosophies on that. I don't necessarily think that it's not about not resetting the same goals that you've had. Maybe it's about changing your approach to how you tackled and how
Good
how
way
you
of
went
saying
about
that.
those goals. However, there's also another aspect to this, and really when it comes down to my biggest piece of advice, and this is actually a conversation I had with one of my clients yesterday, was my biggest advice for succeeding with someone's goals, and this is often something that I share with my clientele, is that in order to set yourself up for success at the start of any physique transformation, whether that be, whatever health or physique related goal or fitness related goal you have, you need to determine the why behind your reason for pursuing the goals you're setting in and of themselves. Because having a strong why is important not only for helping you get started on working towards a goal, but helping you remain committed to the process, even when things get difficult or when you face stalls, you face plateaus or setbacks. And really, how I like to conceptualize the why aspect is I want you to think about who you are currently. Who do you want to be? Who would you like to be? Think about the goals you wish to accomplish and what you'll need to do to get there. So don't just think about like these lofty goals that you want to hit, but also think about the work that's required. Are you willing to make those sacrifices? Are you willing to make the changes? And also think about what type of individual it would take. Who would you have to transform yourself into to accomplish what you're setting out to do? Because it's really important to be objective with yourself. Listen, I know I'm not going to be Mr. fucking Olympia, so I'm not going to set that goal. I'm not willing to do what it takes to get there. However, there are goals within my business, within my physique that I have that I know I will make any sacrifice necessary to get to the level that I'm looking to get to. And it's really important to critically think about our why and also think about what are we willing to do to get to our goals. And then what we need to do is we want to make sure that our why and our phase specific goals align and complement one another. So, for instance, if your main why is to improve your health so that you can become the best version of yourself, both physically and mentally in 2023, you should set goals that reflect that. They should be in alignment with one another. And then in order to ensure our goals align with our why, we should set multiple goals that are congruent with improving our health. So when I do this exercise with clients, often what I'll do is, I like to break down goals into different categories. And so I have them set different goals. So for instance, I'll have them set goals such as physique and body composition related goals. I'll have them set nutrition goals. I'll have them set training goals. I'll have them set metabolic health goals. I'll have them set activity goals, habit-based goals. And then also I like to hear about their professional goals because often I find when someone's really ambitious from a professional perspective, they're ambitious in the damn gym too. So it's like they complement one another. People that get after in all walks of life, or they should, or they have the ability to. Because I always say that if someone's successful in bodybuilding or successful in transforming their physique, you can change your body, you can change your life. And so my advice, to the audience out there would be to create different type of fitness related goals, and this can improve, include body composition improvement related goals such as losing body fat, gaining muscle, recomping, maybe bringing up a certain body part. You can have then another category, which would be nutrition related goals, such as improving your diet quality, improving dietary adherence, and the consistency of your habits. eating more whole foods, getting in more fruits and vegetables, improving your relationship with food and your mindset on nutrition, and getting away from looking at nutrition as this dichotomous thing, as this black and white construct of good foods and bad foods, on diet foods or on plan foods, off plan foods, and really looking at it as foods as a spectrum that are more conducive and less conducive to your goals. And then also avoiding some of the binge and restrict patterns of the past that you've had with food. So if you're someone that has overeaten in excess and then over restricted yourself, try to be more moderate in your approach to things. And then from there, you could look at training and physical activity and performance related goals, such as maybe lifting, getting lift specific goals in terms of your strength, rep max goals, general goals like increasing strength across all body parts or improving muscular endurance, hitting a daily step count, increasing the consistency of your training, and hitting a certain amount of resistance training sessions per week. And then stuff like health and lifestyle related goals, such as improving your metabolic health, having better blood work going forward, improving your sleep habits, developing better stress management skills, reducing your alcohol consumption. And that way you have multiple goals to work towards and multiple areas that you can see improvement within. Because often we're not going to, progress is not a linear process. And so you're not always going to see every single week a body composition improvement. But if you have all these categories, goals within all these categories, you may see blood glucose improve in 1 week, but not your body composition. Or you might not see your scale weight go down 1 week, but you may see that your lifts in the gym go up, within that same week. So you always have things to look towards, and you can always take weekly and daily wins that'll help keep the momentum going. And also, I think it's important to realize that if you're not, or if you're unwilling to change, nothing will change. So I encourage all of you out there to work towards making some positive changes in your life within this year, and also how you approach your health and fitness this year in order to get a better result than you have in past years. Because really, when it comes down to it, you're going to have to make a change to see positive changes. You're going to have to improve who you are, your habits, your behaviors, your actions, to improve the outcomes that you get. So if you're not where you want to be, or you have not seen or attain the results that you've been looking for year after year, this is your year to make it happen. And it's going to come from changing the things within yourself, and not only within yourself from a mental and physical perspective, but also the habits and the effort you put forth on a daily basis that will add up and have a domino and compounding effect over time.
I like how you said all that. I think we both had two different ways of saying similar things, just set up differently. I want to wrap this up with, if you're a listener, if you're a coach, if you're a client, whatever you are out there, as long as you're listening to us, because we're amazing. I challenge you all to keep that promise to yourself this year. Think of 3 things that really mean something deep to you, that you really, really want for your future self. And then at the end of the year, ask yourself if you kept those promises. I'll be curious to see what people would say. And B, I want you to do the same thing, because I'll think of 3 myself, and I'll kind of like throw it out there, but not like I drank a gallon of water every fucking day. That's like normal living stuff. Like, something that really tests you in a capacity that makes you better overall as a person. And it can be health and fitness related, sure, but just different stuff. I think that if people look at the promises that they break with themselves, they'd be really shocked at the pattern and how it really lines up to low self-esteem and everything else.
Absolutely. I love that you did that, and that's providing accountability for ourselves and our audience. And I want to challenge our audience as well. If you guys have made it to this, latter stage of the podcast, we are at the last minute or so. If you guys have made it this far and you are listening to podcasts, please take a screenshot, share us on your story, and also share with us in your social media audience one health, fitness, or physique related goal that you have for this year in 2023. And let's hold each and every one of us accountable. All right. So guys, thank you so much for listening. We wish you a happy new year, and we're looking forward to bringing you a ton of content this year. Next week, we have a very special guest, Bill Campbell, who will be on the podcast. So we're looking forward to that. And going forward,
Bill's the fucking man.
We're going to be having a ton of educational, informational, and value-packed episodes coming your way. So we look forward to ringing in a year of prosperity and progress with you guys.
Couldn't have said it better, man. I'm not going to step all over your words. Be that way. All right, dude. Well, where everybody can find you at.
Hey guys, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at @BrandonDeCruz_, or feel free to reach out to me for coaching. My roster is open for the new year for anyone that is looking to set goals and actually achieve them this year. And the email that's best to reach me at is bdecruzfitness@gmail.com. Jeff?
So if you guys can find me on Instagram and I'm not censored, it's Jeff Unbreakable Black. I'm actually moving over to YouTube. I'm going to be doing a bunch of cool content this year. I've been working on my content stuff, my own website, just for my book and things like that. I'm probably going to be, I like the Joe Rogan kind of format a little bit. So me and my buddy are going to toy with doing some different stuff along with the podcast idea or the video stuff I want to do. And then if you guys are looking for me on YouTube, it'll be Relentless Forever. For all my coaching stuff, me and my team is starting to shoot professional videos twice a month or one day a month. We're going to be putting out our goal 8 videos a month on YouTube of various topics. So those are the places you can find me. Until next week, B, you have yourself a good one.
You want, man?
Peace.